It makes you tired. I can't imagine working out.
Yeah. Okay, we're good.
Okay, if we're on, we'll call this meeting to order at 6 o'clock and we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, everybody. Ruth, could you call the roll, please?
Amy. Here. Mike.
Here.
Rebecca. Here. Nat.
Here.
Debbie.
Here.
5 members present. Thank you.
Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
No.
Okay, none being heard, the first order of business is communications from the audience. Is there anyone who would like to address the board? Okay, none being heard, we'll move on to the next item of business, which is district reports. We'll start with the superintendent's report. Mr. Hanhart, you have the floor.
Thank you. First, I'd like to congratulate all the students and staff at Bayfield High School for a very successful homecoming week. All of our teams won their respective games last week, and it was great to see the Wolverine spirit, not just at the high school, but in all of our buildings and in the community. Ms. Hogus prepared the recommendation for members of the Sick Leave Bank Committee. These individuals are selected at the building level and represent the district in making decisions on applicants to the Sick Leave Bank. As per our sick leave policy, we must approve the committee annually, and we've attached the recommended members in the action item later tonight. Thank you to the board members and the administration for participating in a very productive conversation at the retreats that we had last week. Principals were able to present data reports to the board at the board retreat. I've attached the summary of the district performance frameworks to this report. That's not true. I did not do it. I will attach it next time. Principals and directors were able to work with Dr. Coleman, Mr. Hesford, and myself on short cycle feedback programs and protocols, and we'll be implementing the rounding process in all of our buildings and departments to gain feedback and promote two-way communication between staff and leadership. Mr. Hesford and I will be attending the What's Right in Education Leadership Conference with Huron Studer next week. We're excited to elevate Bayfield School District to the next level in our continuous improvement work. Ms. Parnell and I had a very productive conversation with State Board of Education member Kathy Plummer during her visit on September 29th. Our focus really was on local control, talking about students with disabilities and state accountability systems. And the annual Panorama Student Perception Surveys are being administered this week to students. We're looking forward to receiving those results to help guide our future direction. The teacher perception surveys will go out in early November. That's all I have.
What's a rounding process?
Absolutely. So it develops from the medical field, where if you'll see in teaching hospitals and in most hospitals where they go around and they check on all the vitals and check everything, and they teach you to come in and present what your case is or your medical diagnosis is and be able to use that. And the way that it relates back in education is it's an opportunity for leaders to check in with everybody, see what's going great, see where our struggles are at, see who we need to celebrate and who's been really helpful, and just to get feedback. So all of our administrators are asked between now and December 1st, Mr. Hesford?
Sorry?
December 1st?
Is when Benita will be back?
Yeah, to have 5 of those conversations, not part of the evaluation process, but just really that check-in, get the opportunity to have open up a two-way communication and check the temperature, if you will, of how things are going. And I've used that in meeting with the sounding board committee members, and it's been pretty impactful just to use that process. And it's, take notes, a time to listen and a time to hear what's happening in the district so that we can come back together as admin teams and address anything that we need to.
Makes sense. Any questions for Mr. Hanhart?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next item is board member reports. We'll start with Mr. Turner.
2 weeks ago, I was able to attend the CASB delegate assembly. During the actual delegate voting, most of what passed has to do with school funding. Lots of it applies to getting rid of Tabor, paying Tabor off, and finishing that out. There were a couple of resolutions that did not pass that kind of seem like districts that can do it are. As far as teacher pay goes, there was one saying that teacher pay should start at X amount of dollars. And it turns out that all the districts that can do it are doing that like we are right now. We're doing everything that we can to keep up with salary. The outcome of the entire conference, I am going to be running for CASB board here in December. And that's truly all I have, guys.
When you say trying to pay off, you said Tabor, is it Tabor or the BS factor?
The BS factor, sorry. Coming back to to pay off the budget stabilization fund. So we're just to get school districts kind of out of the hole on that deal.
So their goal is to zero that out every year.
They're doing their best. Getting legislators to back these resolutions, there's a couple of them that are going to be really hard, but if they do, that shouldn't be something that we'll be dealing with come 2025.
Good news.
When are the CASB board elections? Are they before the CASB conference or?
The CASB board elections are during the business meeting at the
Oh, it
CASB
is.
conference.
Okay, that's what I thought it was. Just I couldn't remember. Very nice.
Any other questions for Matt?
So,
Rebecca, do you have any updates?
no updates today.
Amy?
And I have policies on action and discussion that we'll talk about when we get there.
Okay.
I don't really, our board meeting was all about policies.
Okay, Finance Committee doesn't either. Mr. Moore will be giving us an update here shortly. So we will move on to the next report, which is from the BHS principal, Ms. McGlinnis.
Good evening. How's
Good evening.
everybody? So we have two students who have petitioned for early graduation this year. They're unfortunately not able to make it here this evening because they are both working, I believe, is what I understood anyway. So the first one is a young man named Gary Wright. He came to us a couple of years ago and he transferred over to Wolverine Academy, where he was able to regain quite a few credits to the point where he was able to work ahead and is actually to a point where now he can graduate early. And his plan is to just keep working while he explores options in studying agricultural management. And then our second candidate is Brady Leonard. Brady this summer already moved out of his family home and has been living independently as an adult and attending classes at Fort Lewis College all semester. He's been very successful and is really ready to move on and take advantage of being done early and being a full-time working adult. So they have met all graduation requirements. If approved, we would greatly miss their sense of humor. They are both really, really funny kids.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Any questions for Ms. McGlinnis?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
You said they had petitioned. What does that mean?
They-
how does that work out?
They're in policy, they have to write a letter to me explaining how they know they're ready to be done from high school early by verifying that their credits are all done, that they have a solid post-secondary plan in place, and how that benefits them finishing early versus staying in school one more semester.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And then Ms. McGlinnis usually meets with the families to discuss it, to make sure everybody's on board before bringing a recommendation policy guides that we have to approve early graduates.
Sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amy.
Next report is from Director of Finance, Mr. Moore.
Thank you for that greeting.
High expectations for this.
Okay, I put a one-page synopsis attached to the board agenda. It basically lays out where we are for 22-23, the fiscal year just ended. You can see that, and I bolded the headings for those. There was the amended budget. A few weeks ago, we had a finance committee meeting that showed the preliminary, and the adjusted was after we made a few adjustments. Now, the lion's share of that adjustment, as you see, we go from a deficit of 13,500 to a deficit of 468, call it. That was simply because really we knew this was a distinct possibility. What happened was the BMS, the Bayfield Middle School roof work, we budgeted for fiscal 23-24 with some BEST grant help. What happened was that BEST grant didn't come through. We did we had a bunch of work. The roofer had availability to do it in June. The weather was cooperative, and they just did a bunch of work in June. That's not the completion of it. Right now it's in work in progress, but the lion's share of work was done in June, and we need to accrue that into last fiscal year instead of next fiscal year. So there was some other minor adjustments between accounts, grant funds, and the general fund, but the lion's share was the Bayfield Middle School work. Questions?
Can I add a piece around the roof?
Can you add a what?
A piece of information around the roof.
Oh, a piece. I was going to say a piece of roofing.
So Mr. Moore and I discussed, because we had set the amount aside in the transfer to capital reserve fund for the roof this year, the $650,000. And because we had done such a good job of performing at the budget last year, instead of taking that out of this year's budget, we're going to leave that amount in there to continue our effort on improving some of the capital expenses that we have and the repairs that we have, and trying to get us back on schedule, as well as our vehicle purchases. So you'll see that he's amended the budget for 22-23 to move that 450,000-ish over into the expenditure in 22-23, but we are not going to lessen the budget for 23-24 at this time. We're not coming with an amendment to that because we feel that we're financially stable enough to be able to continue to focus on some of the repairs and things like that we need to address, and our vehicle purchases. Correct.
As Mr. Hanhart said, that is currently the intention that we've discussed. Of course, we can't do a budget amendment in a vacuum. Any budget amendment will be done in the normal time frame around the January of 24 for this 23-24 year, and then we'll have a better assessment of where we're at with all the line items in the budget. But currently we think that with deferred maintenance and other vehicle for not only buildings, boilers, updating or purchasing newer, more recently used vehicles for our various fleets, it's probably not a bad idea to leave some transfer to the capital fund in the 23-24 budget.
It makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, what we show is a $1.2 million budget deficit next year, but it gives the administration and the board a better idea of really where the money is, and we can watch that 4 million-ish goal that we talked about, keeping in reserve, well, a little bit more accurately when it's presented this way. I think this is smart.
Yeah, and if you notice the net budget for next year of 1.2 million is primarily made up of that 1.285 transfer to the capital reserve fund. So
Yeah, it's a more realistic way to look at things, to me.
we're still looking at other expenditures in the general fund being decently balanced, except for, the transfer to get some of our deferred maintenance, et cetera, taken care of. Any questions?
Doesn't look like it. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, John.
More.
You.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We still get used to that.
Okay,
We're just starting.
the next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. It consists of 2 items, which is the personnel agenda, and the approval of the minutes from our September 26th meeting. The coaches hired, it looks like.
I'll make a motion that we approve the personnel agenda and the minutes from the September 26, 2023 meeting as presented.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Rick, would you call the question, please?
Amy,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Rebecca,
Aye.
Aye.
Debbie.
Aye.
Consent agenda carries 5-0. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Next agenda item is discussion items. We have 1 discussion item, which are policies. And staff will be walking us through this.
So we've got 3 policies. The first one, GBAA, sexual harassment policy applicable to staff. The third one, JBB, sexual harassment policy applicable to students. And AC, non-discrimination, equal opportunity policy. All 3 are revised. They're not new. So if you get into them in bold, you can see what the suggested revisions are. And they are all 3 required by law. I think the one that experienced the most change is probably the third one, JBB. Maybe not.
The second one, primarily on the second one, Ms. Davlin, is the change in who is listed in policy as the Title IX coordinators.
Yep, okay, that's,
I think you're right,
We
the
talked
third one
about-
has the most.
yeah, okay.
And JBB is a student policy versus G, which is a staff policy, right?
Yeah, that's my understanding. So they start out kind of, some of the language is similar. The JBB, the board recognizes sexual harassment can interfere with the student's academic performance. And the first one is regarding learning and working environment free from sexual harassment. So there's the addition of just of communication in several places, not just conduct. There's some differences in regard to what we're required to post. And also that the language needs to be age appropriate in what is posted.
So I was looking through here, and it almost looks like they're touching on racial harassment in places, but they never come right out and say it. So I was looking through the rest of the policy, trying to find out where that's addressed for students, and I didn't spend maybe enough time, but quite frankly, it's hit pretty hard for staff, but I never see it talked about for students. Does anyone know if that's in policy?
It's in JICA,
Yes.
the Student Code of Conduct.
Okay.
So I do believe this one is specific to sexual harassment.
Okay. JIC, okay, JIC.
But it should be about the third bullet down. Let me find it, sorry.
He said
JICDA.
CDA.
Mhm.
Okay. I was getting all worried because.
And it is number 6 under JICDA.
So going back to JBB, the stuff that Leon and I briefly were able to talk about was just the changes in regard to what has to be posted in hard copy, the simple age appropriate language regarding the policy. What we didn't talk about, Leon, and I don't know if you want to speak to this briefly, but a formal report or finding of harassment will not be required before a district takes corrective action. I don't know how that looks on the ground for you, or if that's something you haven't done in the past, but
No, we haven't. It's the, I think it's the difference between what was once considered a formal report and by this language that changes to it does not have to be a written report. It can be any verbal communication. I would have to find the exact words. Where they changed it, I'm sorry.
so where I'm looking is JBB page 2 towards the bottom. It's like the second bullet from the bottom. And then additionally above that, they clarify slightly further what harassment means pursuant to state law.
Hold on one second.
And they added a lot to that, as you can see, it was creating a hostile environment based on an individual's sex, and then now we have on, going from page 1 to 2 on JBB, we've got a bolded paragraph with 2 different bullet points under.
It seems like they're mixing like students and maybe not students with staff, because 1 and 2 talk about employment and an individual's work performance
And I think it's,
or working
I
environment.
think some of it's directed, at least the way I read it, is that it's possible that the harassment could be on the part of a staff member towards a student,
Mhm.
is how I read it. And that's why there's some, this one's a little bit, touches on both
It's-
roles.
But like a school, number 1, a school employee conditioning educational benefits or terms of employment on participation in unwelcome sexual conduct, unless there's a student that has a job at the school. And number 2, the conduct or communication unreasonably interferes with the individual's work performance or creates an intimidating hostile or offensive work environment. Those sound like staff things.
If you look at the top of the second one, it discusses the work environment where all members of the school community are treated with dignity and respect. The third one
Where?
focuses on the very, very top, the first sentence.
First sentence of,
The second policy AC. And it discusses all members of the school community.
I think he's in JVB.
Right, and then on JVBB, it talks about the students. So the other piece that I would bring your attention to is all J policies are student policies, all A policies are foundations, and basic commitment policies.
and that's what I'm saying about the JVB. It's like it's written for staff members to me.
Yeah, I kind of see what you're saying.
It doesn't make a lot of sense.
A school
I feel
employee
like it's-
conditioning, educational benefits. Or
Yeah, it's not.
Employment. Because I think when I first read it, I was thinking quid pro quo in the different way where the staff member would be abusing
Yeah.
their role with the student. Mm-hmm.
I feel like Casby has work to do on this one.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we might have had a cut and paste situation here, but I'm not sure. So maybe
Let me look
we could look
into,
into that. It
number
does, it
one
does
on
sound
there.
a little bit.
I'll look into that before we bring it back.
I think the upper part makes sense. But perhaps there was, I guess let's just make sure those are the bullet points the way that they would suggest they read.
1 and 2 both are,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, no, I'll do that. That's easy.
I got behind. AC is just changing who the coordinators are.
Primarily, there's a couple of other small changes in there. Oh, that's the one I was talking about a second ago, that you can file a complaint in person, by phone, email, or any other method, which changes the formal process as it was previously by just in paper.
The only other question I had on AC was towards the end, and I just wanted some clarification from you, Leon. School and district employees will receive periodic training related to recognizing and preventing unlawful discrimination and harassment. I just wanted to clarify when that's happening.
That's
and
part of
how.
our annual training at the beginning of the
That's
year.
what I figured, so I think that was the last question I had. Anybody else? And I was gonna say, I think we should look into those 2 bullet points and just make sure that's the way they should be reading.
We will.
And then these obviously are just discussion tonight.
Okay. Nobody has any further comments or questions. We will move on to, I'm sorry?
No, sir.
Okay. We'll move on to action items. The first action item, the adoptions of policies BC and BCR, which we talked about last week or 2 weeks ago.
I was just gonna say they're both new. And we talked about them last time. And the first one just had updated, kind of some technical edits and informational notes. And then the other one had to do with that gift ban dollar amount.
Well, and I'm not gonna be able to get paid for any speeches.
Have you been paid thus far?
Paid not to.
That's
Sorry,
pretty
Matt.
good, Matt. That's pretty good.
You might remember that in discussion items last time, we had BC, BCR, and GBEB. And we chose not to bring GBEB back as an action item, and we are not recommending any changes to it. That was the tantamount conversation.
So we're not going to.
So we are
cancel
not bringing that
one
back.
for like-
Thank you. I had my little fit over that.
No, I think that was,
You can do better.
it made sense.
Do better. Everybody good?
Yeah.
Good.
I'll make a motion that we adopt policies BC and BC-R as presented.
I'll second.
Should I have a motion and a second? Rick, would you call the question, please?
Amy,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Rebecca. Aye. Matt,
Aye.
Debbie.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
Next action item is approval of the class of 2024 early graduation request as presented by Ms. McGlinnis.
I'll make a motion that we approve the class of 2024 early graduation requests as presented.
And I'll second.
You have a motion and a second. Rick, would you call the question, please?
Amy,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Rebecca. Aye. Matt,
Aye.
Debbie.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, and the third action item, as Leon described in his superintendent's report, is the approval of the sick leave bank committee.
Looks good to me. That representation from every school.
I'll make a motion that we approve the sick leave bank committee as presented.
And I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Rick, would you call the question, please?
Amy,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Rebecca. Aye. Matt,
Aye.
Debbie.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, thanks, everybody. On our next board meeting, typically it would be next week, but because of the changes earlier this month, this is our final board meeting for the month of October. And our next scheduled board meeting is on the second Tuesday in November, November 14th. The last item on the agenda is adjournment. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thanks, everybody. Meeting is adjourned.